You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Kathy Biasi, and I'm an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. On today's show, my guest is Dr. Jeffrey Burke, and we're diving into a movement that sits right at the intersection of health and sustainability. We're going to learn all about regenerative agriculture, what it is, why it matters, and how it ties into the quality of food we eat and the natural health products that we use. It is truly an eye-opening conversation about how the way we treat our soil can actually impact our health on a very deep level. Dr. Jeffrey Burke is a respected leader in the natural products industry with over 40 years of experience spanning management, product formulation, research, and development. A renowned lecturer, educator, and author, he currently serves as the Director of Education for Kokora Life, a company dedicated to creating certified organic and certified regenerative herbal products. In his role, Dr. Burke ensures the public has access to the latest health insights and remedies. Previously, he hosted a 42-year running national radio talk show. That is outstanding. It's quite an accomplishment, where he interviewed industry experts and shared groundbreaking health information. Now, through his podcast, Honest Health with Jeffrey Burke, he continues to educate and inspire, interviewing top figures in health, wellness, and beyond. I am so excited for you to listen to this show. Farming, where we get our food from, this whole new opening up area of regenerative agriculture is something that we need to understand and be on the cusp of learning when it comes to how we are going to choose our pipeline of food sources, and as you will see, how this ties into the natural health products and supplements that we use. We're going to talk about what regenerative agriculture is and how it differs from sustainable or conventional farming. We are going to talk about regenerative methods and how they impact soil and why different methods within regenerative agriculture are key for success. And the role that consumers have and playing in what we play in the area of supporting regenerative agriculture. Because obviously, if we are not consumers of regenerative agricultural products, this is not going to be a success. Again, it's such it's a passion of mine to really understand farming techniques and how doing things naturally, how adding to soils, rotating, all of these things are so important for the outcome of our food sources. So please do stay tuned. We will be back in just a few minutes to talk with Dr. Jeffrey Burke.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to our show. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Dr. Burke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on today.
You're a little intimidating with all of your experience in radio and interviewing. So, I'm really going to put on my host hat today and hopefully can live up to the wonderful host that you have been over all of your time on radio. I know you've interviewed many, many people. So a whole world of experiences that you can use a platform and talk from. But you're very much involved in the natural products industry, and from my understanding of how your history has gone, you've really taken on the role of an educator in the space of like soil, the state of soil, agriculture, regenerative agriculture. So I want to focus on that quite a bit because I'm not sure that our audience has a true concept of what this is, the power of regenerative agriculture. So sorry for the long introduction, but I just wanted to sort of set the stage for you. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. So if we can get into maybe the history of you and how through all of what you have done has landed you in this space, I think it'd be a great starting point for everybody.
Okay, that sounds great. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Burke. I am a 45-year veteran of the natural products industry. I have been very active in almost every level of the industry, and I had a radio show for 42 years. We did about 20,000 radio shows.
Wow.
We launched about 200 different lines with about 200 different companies, and I've been very blessed to interview some of the most incredible people, best minds that I could possibly come up with. And about a year and a half ago, I ended the show. And of course, I went through microphone withdrawal, and then I started a podcast. So I figured that was something that I continued to do. And I've worked with a lot of companies. I've owned stores. I've ran large chains. Last year, I came in contact with Rick Scalzo, who was the gentleman that founded the line of products called Gaia out of North Carolina. He had the company for over 30 years. He really brought the idea of certified organic products to the natural products industry. And about 5 years ago, he sold to his partners. He went to Costa Rica and he bought an agricultural farm that was certified organic, that is now certified regenerative as well, kind of taking it to the next level. And the name of his company is called Kokora. And he contacted me to be his director of education. So as the new products that are being grown in Costa Rica are starting to launch, I am his educator. I travel around the country and I lecture to groups and organizations and consumers and doctors and people around the country about regenerative agriculture. Because interestingly enough, because I've been in the industry so long, I was around when organic launched. And it was like the biggest thing in the world to be able to purchase organic crops that had no pesticides and chemicals, and they actually tasted so much better. But here we are 4.5 decades later, and you're still not getting the pesticides and the chemicals in your organic crops and produce and fruits. But what we're not getting today is the nutritional value due to over tilling, not enough crop rotation, not enough resurfacing and rebuilding the soil. So the next step that we're now seeing, regenerative, is not only following the same organic standards, but it's actually working to protect the soil, basically to sustain the conditions and to actively regenerate the soil and the biodiversity and the ecosystem of the soil. So it's a completely different way of actually farming, but we're not just thinking about the crop today. We're thinking about the soil today, next year, and down the road.
So regenerative agriculture differs from sustainable, or is it the same terminology, the same thing?
I think sustainable actually covers almost all kinds of farming, because even traditional with chemicals, there is a way of getting some sustainable benefit, but very low because of the chemicals. So today, really, the things that we're looking at are going to be certified organic, which means no chemicals and anything synthetic used in or on the soil or the plants, or regenerative, which is that plus protecting the soil, not tilling, crop rotation, cover crops, keeping the topsoil in place, and not tilling, but actually pulsating the ground with, we use something called a yeoman's plow. And what it does, it has shanks that dig down and open up and break up the blockages and the compactions in the soil, but not uprooting the soil. And actually working the soil so it's got better drainage, and not only better drainage but also better usable moisture in the soil. And then we actually put together our own natural fertilizers, and that is used in and on the plants that have no chemicals. They're basically kind of a fermented munch, a mulch and kind of a munching of leaves and tubers and bark that are fortified with semolina flour and molasses and coffee grounds and eggshells, and put into these big bags and then put in 200-gallon water containers to soak, making this beautiful liquid gold that we use on the plants that are actually fortifying the soil and the actual microbiome of the soil. It's quite amazing. What we're learning is that the regenerative agriculture not only gives you better, healthier products and crops, but it actually increases the potency and the absorbability of the plants by giving them so much nutrition, and also helping to fortify the soil with the drawdown of carbon from the environment into the soil. So very beneficial for the environment as well. And because there's no turning of the soil, we're not losing the plant topsoil that ends up blowing away in many cases.
First thing that pops into my mind, especially when we're going to be talking about the natural health products that so many of us use, how cost prohibitive is this, being passed on to the consumer for the actual farmers? Is this something that, you have to play around with what you're doing? It sounds like, although it sounds like such a wonderful process for the earth, as with anything like this, there's a cost involved. How do you balance that?
Well, I think most of the cost today in agriculture, believe it or not, are the chemicals that are being used, because chemicals are very costly. You have to use a lot of them. And because you're turning the soil and you're not protecting the soil in between the crops, most of that topsoil ends up going away. So actual dirt ends up having to be brought in on a continual basis. It's more costly to grow traditional agriculture than it is growing with regenerative. Because regenerative, you're protecting the soil. You don't lose the topsoil. You're not having to pay for the chemicals. Basically, most of the plants are started in greenhouses and then put into this beautiful soil. Everything grows much faster. You're turning the crops more effectively. And this is quite interesting. When Rick Scalzo grew his first turmeric crop the first year, he grew it certified organic, and he had quite a substantial yield because the soil is wonderful down there. The second year, he protected the topsoil, used cover crops, and did regenerative agriculture, and his yield was 5 times more.
What are the challenges for farmers if they want to go to this next level of farming?
I think basically if they're switching over and they've been chemical based for a long time, it's probably going to be a year to 2 years where they're not able to use chemicals in their soil at all, because things that are there have to be kind of utilized and absorbed by the soil or by the environment. You can't use chemicals. I think it's 2 to 3 years prior to switching over to either organic and or regenerative. So there's downtime for people that have been using it in a chemical base. Now, if they're starting a brand new crop on a brand new farm and they start certified organic and certified regenerative, they really don't have the chemicals in the soil that they have to worry about at the onset.
What about water usage? I mean, is this a completely environmental friendly way to farm? Is there any impact on any other area like water that should be noted?
Well, 2 things we have to remember with regenerative agriculture and using cover crops, which means you see nothing but green on the top. A lot of the things like mucuna and things like that are used in between. Let's say you're growing rows and rows of turmeric or ashwagandha. We might plant turmeric in between, which actually grows like a weed and covers all the ground to protect the topsoil, also keeping moisture in the soil. Costa Rica is kind of an ideal place because it rains 9 months a year. So there's so much utilization of water that naturally is just coming down. And because the soil becomes so saturated, and using that yeoman's plow and opening up the soil somewhere 20 to 25 inches down so the roots are able to grow straight down and not 6 inches like a traditional farm. And then you see the roots growing sideways because the impaction inhibits them from getting deep roots. It actually becomes very, very cost effective. Everything has to be watered no matter where you are. In Costa Rica, we get the benefit of Mother Nature helping us out a lot.
Can you give us an idea of when you started with this specific aspect of farming? What did you see change in the soil? We talk a lot about our food doesn't have nutritional value, even if it's organic, but I don't know how often it's actually spoken of, the actual impact that the soil has on our food.
Well, I think that we have to think of, most of us know about the microbiome in our own digestive systems, and how the microbiome is not only a balance of digestive enzymes, but also good and bad bacteria having this ideal balance in our body to be able to sustain life, protect our body, help our immune system, and also help us process and get the most out of the foods and the supplements that we're consuming. The soil is its own microbiome. And because we use something like this natural ingredients that we put into the soil has time to heal continuously. It's called ME, and that's this liquid kind of gold that we use that's made from the mulch down there. When you put this into the soil, it actually builds the soil very deep down inside, bringing nutrients to the roots, which gives you beautiful crops. It's quite interesting. If you compare a regenerative farm and you see, let's say, ashwagandha growing, and you see it somewhere else in the world where it's being grown in a traditional field, the crops grow very slowly, where at regenerative, they grow very, very quickly and very large. The roots from like a turmeric can be 18 to 20 inches deep. And in some farms, they're about 6 inches with a little soft kind of sprawling to the side, if you will, because there's not the nutrients in the soil. This yeoman's plow not only pulsates the ground and opens up those compacted areas, but that same ME, that liquid gold, goes down the shanks, down 20 to 25 inches in the soil. So you are building a microbiome loaded with nutrients. It's almost like recreating like a virgin soil, and the nutrients are held there because they're not being washed away, they're not being blown away, and there's no chemicals that are deterring what they can do, because chemicals work against the soil. They don't work with it. They work to keep things away from the plants, but they do nothing to rebuild the actual soil. So I think that's the major difference. Cost effective, yes. Beneficial in yield, absolutely. Protective of the soil and the environment, yes.
Do you do research on the interaction between soil microbiome and human microbiome, and how the soil can actually benefit the human microbiome?
Well, I think that the biggest benefit would be the end result of the crop. When you compare, we're doing a lot of studies now on the herbs that are being grown down there: ashwagandha, bacopa, passion flower, holy basil. And when the studies are coming in, the nutritive value is 3 to 4 times stronger than many of the brands that are out there, and also many of the crops that are grown in many parts of the world. And the benefit is that people are able to take less of them to get benefits that they may have to take a lot more of with other ones that are not grown regeneratively. We are seeing a surge in companies that are actually starting to look into switching their farms over to regenerative. One, because the crops are much larger. Two, the yields are just so much bigger, and the nutritional value is so much more dense. When we consume products that are more dense with nutrients, our body reaches for those healthy nutrients. Because I think sometimes our body goes through the motion of taking supplements, and I think a lot of people take supplements. They don't know about the quality. They may not ask questions. It's more of a naiveness. Maybe something is better than nothing. And I look at it this way: if I'm going to take the time to take a supplement, and I take a lot of them, I want to take it from a company that gives me the highest nutritional value in the most absorbable form, that my body can benefit from. And I think that that's really important because sometimes just taking something for the sake of taking something, maybe to make ourselves feel like we're doing really something constructive, is something better than nothing. Yes, but could we do more? We can, and our body will show you the benefits of using things that are better for us. It's like eating a terribly low quality diet of food and eating a Mediterranean diet that's loaded with nutritional value.
So then the question becomes, what role does the consumer play to help support regenerative farming?
I think you're going to start seeing regenerative sections that are in health food stores, mom and pops, brick and mortars, and chain stores. They're actually getting asked in the stores on the store level. And because I'm in the industry all the time, I'm always traveling. I travel about 3 weeks a month all over the country. And what I end up doing is I'm seeing these stores that are putting in regenerative sections, teaching their customers that these are products that are grown using regenerative agriculture, using regenerative methods, helping us live a more regenerative lifestyle. So we're actually doing things that not only support ourselves, the quality of our well-being and the health of our body and the way that our body works, but we're also protecting the soil. It's funny, there's this quote that says, we borrow the planet from our children. And I think that's very true. But right now, we're not doing anything to protect the planet for our kids. I saw this amazing statistic the other day that said we are 60 years away from losing most of the topsoil on our planet. We're 57% down since 1989 in the amount of insects that we have on our planet. And the last 10 years, our bird populations are down by 40%. Now, they're pointing their finger not at global warming, but at pesticides.
Okay, so you open that door for me. Is it might be a question that it's too much here, but is there a relationship between climate change and the way we farm and regenerative agriculture? Do you look at that through that lens at all in when you're educating people?
I do. And I think that we have to remember that most traditional farms around the country, they overtill and they don't rotate crops. They use a lot of chemicals. They don't put back into the soil. They continually take from the crop, from the soil, but they really are not refortifying. I grew up in the Midwest where the farms would use stair manure and they would just put it on top. They didn't actually till it in. And many of those farms would run rows and they were continually adding in nitrogen and potassium and things to their soil, so they stayed very beneficial. So here we have today this amount of global warming, and I mean, there's a lot of opinions on global warming, and it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but I know they talk about gas vehicles affecting the heat of the planet, but then you look at the planet and you say, are we really heating up to that degree? It's so minuscule. Is it really making a difference? I think what we're seeing more than anything is the amount of chemicals we use in the environment that are staying in the air, that are actually floating around in the environment, that are touching every single thing we do every day and affecting what we breathe in as well as what we're consuming. That's where the major problem is. So is there a link toward global warming? I'm not really sure. I just think that there are areas in the country that don't get the rain they used to. There are areas in the world and on the planet that are not as wet and moist as they used to. Us personally as humans, we have destroyed so many areas, so many rainforest areas, so many places that we're just chopping down forests that we're giving moisture and absorbing carbon from the environment and putting it back into the soil. I think one of the most detrimental things we have against global warming is just ourselves.
Fair. Now, just before we end off this part of the show, is it a hope for you, or is it actually something you are seeing unfold that regenerative agriculture can be scaled globally? Or is it, in your mind's eye, certain parts of the world can take advantage of this and we may not see it in other parts of the world?
I think we're going to start to see it around the world. Interestingly enough, down in Costa Rica, there are 9 or 10 certified organic farms very close to Rick's farm in Costa Rica, and they are all deciding to switch over to regenerative agriculture. We are seeing this in places like Brazil. We're seeing it in El Salvador. I did a podcast the other day in Dubai. Well, I wasn't there, but it was in Dubai. And they're saying that they're starting to figure out ways to incorporate regenerative in. Their problem is it's mostly sand. So they have to build their farms and bring soil to build the foundations to be able to start things that are, will allow them to be more functional. So we're seeing it. We're seeing it start to take hold. And I think more than anything else, it comes down to being able to make more quality crops, to be able to make more food, to be able to feed more mouths around the planet. Our birth rate in our country is down, but around the world, many places the birth rate is up. So that means more mouths to feed, more food to produce. And I think a lot of people are going to look at regenerative more along the way of making bigger crops to be able to serve people better.
Will regulations be cost prohibitive towards farmers who may be inclined to go this way?
I don't.
And to that, just adding on to that, do farms have to be placed in certain strategically to be called regenerative? So they can't be within certain areas that chemically managed farms are.
I think it's the same parameters as like organic farming.
Okay.
I think there's a field of and one of the biggest problems we have is with the crops out there using chemicals today is wind is our enemy.
Yes.
And I think we have to remember, because we're not just destroying other people's crops that may be trying to grow organically, but we're also working on the marine system, the ecosystem, the oceans, all that kind of stuff are being affected. I have a feeling we'll follow the same traditional standards as organic farms, which means you'll need to be, I think, 20 to some odd miles away from regular traditional chemical-based plants. But I think that we're going to be embraced in many different ways. We're seeing a lot of focus already happening in Washington. I mean, my foundational goal for the next couple years will be to get in front of Congress and start hopefully being able to work on initiatives for farmers to start this transition. And in Kokora down in Costa Rica, they were awarded a gold standards certification. It's never been given before. That was rating the soil and the nutritive value and the microsystem and the plants and the crops and the water and the moisture. The first gold standard ever given in Costa Rica, and there's never been a gold given in the United States. There's been silvers and bronzes, but it's the first time, and I think we're going to start to see the Regenerative Certification Board, because they will certify whether you get regenerative certification, just like getting organic certification. So there's going to be a lot of hoops to go through, but I think it's always going to be beneficial for not only the consumer, but for the planet.
Well, I'm going to assume that once certified organic, the next step to regenerative won't be as big of a turnover. I could be very, very wrong in that. But I know, talking back in the day when a lot of farmers were starting to turn over their farms organically, it was an extremely expensive turnover for them, with the fact too that some of land had to be furloughed where in past it may not have been. So I think it's a very interesting, it's a very important, we talk a lot about food and our quality of food, but I don't think people really, when I work with my own clients, it's look where your food is coming from. If the food is not sourced well, the nutritive value, and this just sort of lays the foundation for it all. Let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. The second part of our show, we're going to start dealing with the natural health products and how this, our first segment, impacts the second segment. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. My guest is Dr. Jeffrey Burke. Dr. Burke, definitely we have a much clearer understanding of the importance of healthy soil. We didn't even talk about nitrogen, but all these aspects of farming. My first and this was a few years ago, was a biodiversified winery. And I thought that was fascinating. They put little rose bushes at the front of their rows of grapes. And I thought that was ingenious. It's going back to how farmers used to have to farm. I mean, and which is just an awesome thing, especially when you're in the health space. But what occurred to me when you're talking about the purity of the soil and then the purity of the crops that are coming from the soil is that now you've got to put these into a natural product, into a supplement form. Does it require more preservative than the traditional supplement? Does it require any preservative?
I think that you could actually, as a manufacturer and a formulator, go in any direction. We are going in the purest direction because transparency has been something that has really developed over the last 4 or 5 years. And I don't think people really had the focus on it for the longest time. But the reason, when it comes down to it, because everything is growing so deep and so beautiful, and the biodiversity and the ecosystems are so strong, they are making these crops that, when analyzed, are coming in with levels of ingredients like withanolides with ashwagandha off the charts. Curcuminoids with turmeric off the charts, meaning to the consumer that they're going to get results faster. And be able to notice things more effectively. Now, at that point, some people will choose to use less and use a filler or a binder in the capsule. We're not doing that. We're not using any fillers, any binders, nothing at all, no excipients, no magnesium stearates, nothing that people traditionally like to use as a filler to kind of fill up a capsule. We're using vegan capsules because we want to make sure that we're inclusive of the people that it's important to them. We're also using glass bottles and no BPA, plastic bottles at all. We're making sure that, and you look at the ingredients, there's nothing on the additive base list that has any chemicals or preservatives. So we're able to, by keeping it natural, still be able to guarantee a 2-year shelf life on a product that's being manufactured without anything harmful to the consumer. There's a lot of people today that are trying to be healthy and they're trying to do the right thing. But they may not be eating a diet that's very nutritious, so they may be getting side effects from the foods and the chemicals and the preservatives used in the food. And then here they are bringing in supplements, but they may be sensitive to the binders, the fillers, and the agents that are being used. So, they're fighting a double wall. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that our people that are using any of our herbal products or any of our functional mushroom products, they're getting something in a form that will give them the cleanest, most transparent formula so they can get the benefit without having to be worried about things that are added to the product to make it sit on a shelf longer.
Are there different legalities, qualifications, certifications that regenerative products have imposed upon them versus the traditional supplement market?
Absolutely. To be able to even use anything and use the terminology regenerative on your label, you have to follow all the rules and the regulations that go with being a certified regenerative farm, which means we mentioned some of them, plenty of water, deep watering that's done there. Most of it in the areas that we're growing, Mother Nature is doing it. No chemicals, no tilling, cover crops, which meaning that in between every crop there's green, so we're holding the moisture and the water in, and making sure that your surrounding areas don't have any spray or overspray that's heading in your direction. It's kind of like growing certified organic. There's standards with certified organic. The number one is no chemical, no pesticides, and everything else. But even with organic, they still do a lot of tilling. But with regenerative, we don't till. So those are things you have to follow to be able to grow the crops and use the name regenerative agriculture and regenerative crops in your products. If you don't follow those standards, you can't use it and you can't market a product at all or even talk about it being regenerative.
I have to believe that this comes at some type of an increased cost for the customer. So I'm getting a very clear view why you need to be on board because as with the company, because if people are not understanding the value, then they won't invest in it. So how much do you feel needs to be done in that space, not just within your own company, but how do you see this broadening out for people to be able to understand what they're getting, Where do you need to see impact in the supplement market?
I think we need to, it all comes down to education, per your point before. I think that you can't just educate the consumer. You have to educate the people in the stores, the first line of people in retail stores that everybody goes to get their questions answered. I'm doing lectures at many hospitals and many medical organizations. They're being inquisitive about regenerative. I'm seeing in larger health food grocery stores where they carry a lot of produce, they now have regenerative agricultural products being grown right next to organic. So that's starting to filter in. The regenerative sections in the vitamin and supplement aisles, they're starting to pop up. The terminology is being used more. I think we're seeing more in social media. We're seeing a lot of information out there about regenerative agriculture. A lot of companies that are now coming on board. It's being talked about a lot. It's a very hot topic right now, and it seems like the interest is there. And I don't know if it's because maybe we're just now understanding and getting the realization that we can't just keep writing checks on an account that we don't make deposits to. Like our soil, we have to start taking care of it and making sure that we're doing everything to protect it. Otherwise, it's not going to be here. And if it is here, it's not going to be healthy enough to be able to grow the crops that we need in the nutritional value that we need to grow them in.
How many companies are you seeing taking on this? You have your own particular farms for your own company. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how are you seeing the growth in just regenerative farming as a standalone?
It's growing very rapidly. I think there's now about 25 or 30 farms, some in the United States in areas like Oregon and Washington and Idaho. Up in Canada, we're seeing regenerative farms. We are seeing them, of course, in Central America. We're starting to see them in other countries. I saw an article the other day about the United Kingdom starting to do research on growing regeneratively. Many of the Asian countries, parts of Korea, Japan, and even China starting to do regenerative agriculture. So I see it moving. I see it going in the right direction. I'm just really glad that we are doing what we're doing at the time when it's really starting to become something people are looking toward, because I think it's going to be very powerful. And I think, honestly, what's going to end up happening is people are going to feel different. You know, we live in a very impatient world where how we feel and how quickly we feel things bases our success and how much we love and believe in something, because we become kind of spoiled with many medicines and pharmaceuticals that sometimes give you results very quickly. So in our mind, we think that everything should give you the same benefit. But, you know, we don't get in these messes of our health overnight. It takes sometimes years for us to run ourselves into the ground. So even though we want the magic wand, we have to understand that it's not going to be there for us. That's going to take time. But I think the bottom line is people are going to be able to start enjoying the benefits of crops grown regeneratively that taste good, that are good, and using supplements where they see results a lot faster. And I do think that the motivation is going to be very quick and very swift.
Would you call your supplements like a food-based supplement? Would you?
Yes.
You would. Okay.
Yep.
So in theory, when we're talking about the regeneration of the soil and the vitamins and all of that, you could cost balance, because I'm sure that these supplements have to come with a bit of an increase from, your Jamesons that are sitting in the drugstore. But would you say that with supplements produced from regenerative agricultural farms, there is an argument that less is actually more, and maybe cost can be balanced with not having to have a cupboard full of your B vitamins, your C, your can we cut out a lot of supplements if we have a few potent good ones?
Well, I think that when we're dealing with herbs and herbal medicine, or functional herbs and functional mushrooms, they're kind of in a category of their own. What I'm finding is that because we're coming out with some of the condition-specific formulas, which are going to be for things like sleep and stress and adrenals and that kind of stuff, you're going to get an accumulation and a combination of these beautifully regenerative herbs with certified organic functional mushrooms put together. So the product becomes a lot more potent, so you can use less ingredients to get the same effect. And the prices, comparison to the products that are already in the health food stores, it's almost extremely comparable. And I think to your point that does make great sense. So we can use less because they are more potent and they're grown in a way that the nutritional benefits are more noticeable and more utilizable.
Do we have to be a little bit more careful with regenerative as far as allergies and things like that? Are they, because they're more potent, do we need to ease into products like yours?
I think we have to be concerned about everything we take by mouth. I have a slogan that I've always used, and it's low and slow. Because everybody reacts differently and we don't all fit in the same box, that I would rather have somebody start with a smaller portion of a dosage or a serving size and listen to their body and how their body reacts, because it's a lot easier to increase it than start taking something. Let's say that it's a 3-a-day dosage and you're taking 3 and you feel fantastic. How do you feel if you took 1? You may feel just as good and just as fantastic. You don't need that gigantic full dosage. So I've always been someone that says, start low and slow, listen to your body. You may find that low is good for you and less is more. And I think that really, and it's also a way of us listening to our bodies, because our bodies do talk, but most of the times we're just not listening or we don't care.
Can you grow your crop for, we'll talk specifically about your company. Can you grow your crops all year round, or are your supplements seasonal?
Actually, we do grow on the farm year round, but different crops at different times.
Okay, so what's the shelf life you said is 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no worry that turmeric, I have no idea. Turmeric grows May to July, so therefore it's harvested, turned into a supplement. There's going to be a low time for turmeric versus, there's no seasonality to the supplements, I guess is what I'm asking.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. And we get that wonderful benefit. And because the crops are so immense, we're able to really put a lot of and be able to produce a lot of product so that we're well covered. And because we're just starting out, there's going to be some kind of testing of the waters, if you will, to see how things go. But what Rick did with Gaia Herbs and basically put herbs on the market, 30 some years ago, when he really started doing liquid fill soft gels and organic and all that kind of stuff. I have a feeling that the industry is ready. The customers, the consumers are very excited, and the buzz is going very strong. And I think we're going to see a very big interest when everything starts to launch fully. And because the crops are growing so well and the yields are so large, I think that's going to help any sustainability issues.
Okay. So forgive me, I'm sure you mentioned this. The farms in Costa Rica, they are owned by your company?
They're owned by Rick Scalzo, who's the owner, founder. Yes.
Okay. Moving into a broader space here, do you think that there's going to be supply chain issues?
In regards to
having this quality of food being able to be turned into a natural health product?
I don't think so. I think that there's obviously things that are going on in the world right now that it may affect supply chains right now due to tariffs and that kind of stuff that's going on. I think there'll be a resolution to that. But in general, we are seeing there's 3 or 4 farms that are grown that we've already inspected in Oregon that are amazing, high quality regenerative farms. And we're looking in other places to make sure that in case something happens and we're not able to sustainably have everything here, we have a backup system built in. And because it's growing so quickly and more farms are starting to say yes to regenerative, I think it's going to be a lot better than it actually is right now.
How quickly do you have to turn the crops into a natural health product?
I think that once you take your raw ingredients, if you store them in the facilities that you store in, you have about a year to be able to utilize them into a product using both extraction, freeze drying, and whatever process you're using to get a 2-year shelf life. So 2 to 3 years, you've got full usability of that crop.
So are you, with your company, are you producing, going into manufacturing right in Costa Rica, or is that being shipped?
No, it's been done stateside. We're doing it here.
It's being done stateside. Okay. Interesting. And no quality, like there's no reason to not do it right as soon as you pick them. The quality is still maintained through the travel?
What's interesting is when you get the products down there, many times the crops are picked, they're washed, they're rinsed, and then they're dried into a dried form so
Mm-hmm.
that you actually able to seal in the nutrients and they don't just deteriorate. And then once that is done, that is what is end up being shipped up to our manufacturers here in the United States.
Okay. So we're talking about supplements, but do you see, looking down the road, is there an even greater potential that you can see between the marriage of natural health products and regenerative agriculture, or does it end here in the supplement form?
I don't know what may be coming next. I'm hoping that as what happened with organic many years ago, that it piqued the interest and the taste buds of people in many areas that maybe for the longest time weren't taking the time to eat high quality foods and didn't really think about nutritional value. And I'm hoping that the same thing happens with regenerative, that it creates an interest for people saying, I want to take supplements that are regenerative because I know the potency is better. I'm going to feel better and make a difference faster. And hopefully they're going to start looking at food saying, these are regeneratively grown crops. I know that the nutritional value is better. And I'm also supporting the regenerative farmers by buying their regenerative crops to support their foundation to keep these coming. I'm hoping that that's what happens, and it just triggers like a Pandora's box of people
Mm-hmm.
being, very, very aware and also excited about trying regenerative.
Well, you just sort of answered the last question I was going to ask you about how would you put words into the mouth of a practitioner or someone who's in the natural health supplement field about promoting these products?
I think most of my doctor friends, and I have friends at probably every big hospital in the country and every teaching facility. And it's funny because nobody wanted to talk to you 30, 40 years ago, but
Mm-hmm.
now they all want you to come and teach the doctors. So, but I think if they would just continue to do what they have been doing for at least maybe the last decade, and tell people to eat as healthy as they possibly can. Stop shopping the end caps at your grocery stores. Start shopping the walls. The produce and protein and bakery and dairy, and do the healthy way of choosing your foods. But whatever you can, whenever your budget will afford it, choose organic certified and regenerative certified to get the best quality. And I am seeing doctors that are starting to do the recommendation. They've been writing the certified organic suggestions for a
Yeah.
while. I think that we're going to see a transition to regenerative as well.
I hope so. I just, I'm sad to see in my local I was just in Paris, and I mean, you have regenerative farming right in front of you, and you just go to markets, and the food is so good. But here at our stores, the organic section is smaller and smaller because it's just, prices are so high in all
Mhm.
areas of shopping in the grocery store. I hope that we can withstand this and really, keep pounding that idea of the quality and sourcing of your food. I think it's very, very, very important. So, about your company, Kokora, are you up and running? And
Mhm.
if so, where are you delivering to? And can Canada hope to see, some of your products?
Canada will be seeing products as well. We're already in negotiations and talks with them as well. And right now, the first 5 Ayurvedic powders are available. They are ashwagandha and super mushroom formulas, 5 different formulas that are available now in over 400 health food stores around the country. The capsules are starting to launch over the next 2 months, and
Excellent.
there'll be the mushroom products, the excuse me, the rock herbs, which is regenerative organic certified singles, and then the condition specific. And then in the fall, we're bringing in a gut line, an immune line, and a women's line. And they're going to be amazing. Once again, all glass bottles, all vegan capsules, no chemicals, no additives, no preservatives. And I just want to say something to your point about the price of organic and stuff. Organic is still a very small sector of our food supply.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope is that regenerative, as it starts to grow and as regenerative starts to spread, it becomes more of the norm.
Wouldn't
And
that be
the
nice?
and that's where we want to go, because that's going to bring prices down and also bring the great quality crops up. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm hoping. That's the transition I'm looking for.
Wonderful. Where can we find out more information about you, about your company that you're working for? I'm sure a lot of people would love to find out more information.
Easy to find me. My webpage is drjeffreyburke.com. You can actually go there. You can tap on my Honest Health logo for my podcast. You can go to Spotify or click on the YouTube logo to go. And as well, kokoralife.com, where you can see everything that's going on with Kokora, all the upcoming products and some beautiful videos. You can follow Kokora and myself on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. We're everywhere. There's plenty of information. I'm very much on the social media part of what I do because it's what I do. So I make sure that people are informed, they're enlightened, they're kept in the loop, and that they have the tools to make better, wiser, healthier decisions.
Well, you're a wonderful advocate for regenerative agriculture for this company. So well done by them to hire you on board, because you're a great speaker and a great elucidator of such key facts. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show.
And thank you so much for making this available to me. And thank you for all you do.
Oh, it's always a pleasure on my end. Everybody, we will talk to you next week on the Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi. Here